Hello, welcome to Mansfield for this evening's Mansfield Public Talk. I think all our speakers are fascinating, but it's fantastic this evening to have a Mansfield alum who is a student from my era. I think that might be the first time this has happened in a Mansfield Public Talk. Sarah Jeehan Khan came here to read theology in 2017, and while she was here made a film which won a prize called Passoon about young climate activists in Pakistan. She's a combination of a climate activist and social activist and a filmmaker. And this week she tells me she started a job with an organisation called 500 Global about startup finance for social enterprises in developing countries. But this evening she's going to show and talk about some films she's made, and particularly the longest film she's going to show is Wood, Spice and Dough, about the women entrepreneurs of the Hunza Valley and entrepreneurs and makers. So I can't see where you've gone now, Sarah. Where's she gone? Anyway, she's going to, I think she might be waiting there. She's here. I know she's here, yes. Okay, so here's Sarah, and she's going to talk through, and then we'll have some questions. Thank you.
I wasn't expecting this many people. I know it's iftar time as well, so I'm very grateful that you all could make it. I've restructured kind of the films for today a little bit, just because it's Women's Day and I wanted to go through as many stories as I could. So I'll be showing 2 one-minute videos, and then the final one is like a longer 19-minute video. I'm very excited to be here. I went to Mansfield, and I think Mansfield always represented the most vibrant and inclusive college, I think, at Oxford, and I was very excited to be here at the same time as Helen Mansfield, who is a big inspiration of mine, and anyone who knows me knows that I love talking about her. And so I started making films when I was 15 years old. My mom was an anthropologist. She used different mediums of film and storytelling to tell the stories of women. In Pakistan, I made my first film around 14, 15. It was about climate change. I noticed that Pakistan was especially vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, but because 70% of the agricultural force in South Asia is women, they were the most directly impacted by these climate risks as well. It was their job to fetch water, gather wood, pick cotton, so whenever there was some kind of an issue with resources, they were the first to be impacted by it. So climate change kind of didn't represent this very distant, abstract, scientific issue, but it represented something that was a very visible threat to human rights and women especially. I met young girls who could no longer go to school because it was their job to fetch water from 6 to 9 kilometers a day away every single day. But I think another thing that I also realized was that because women had such an intimate connection with their environment and the climate around them, they were also the most valuable source of indigenous solutions when it came to climate change. So the more I spent time with them, the more I realized that they were using solutions like kitchen gardening, rainwater harvesting, because they were the first to kind of face the brunt of climate change. And so I started out wanting to really document their solutions and their stories, and really explore their role as kind of custodians of the environment around them. One of the women that I'm quickly going to share with you was Hawa Bibi, who I met in Hunza. And I'm not sure how I have to navigate this, but is it just next from here? Yeah, I get this from you. One second, Erin's just coming. No worries. Sorry. We're struggling to click next. Let's just do... I'll pick that a second.
Yeah. Do we need to just reload the Google thing? Should we just, yeah, we should just do that. There we go.
Oh, yeah?
And then, and then display that. Perfect.
Should we slide?
आपने सुना होगा हुंजा में हवा बीबी के नाम से एक औरत रहती है जो कि सुबह उठती है, एक दरख्त को वो बहुत अच्छी तरीके से देखभाल करती है। जैसे एक माँ अपने बच्चों को देखभाल करती है, इसी तरह सेम हवा बीबी भी अपने दरख्त को इतना परवरिश करती है। जैसे ही दरख्त उसको फल देता है, जो हुंजा की तरफ मेहमान आते हैं उनको प्यार से, उनको जो अच्छे लगे उनको फल पेश करती है। ये बात किसी को समझ आए या ना आए, उनके लिए एक खुशी की बात है।
So, one of the things that I realized was that when we talked about policymaking and policymaking for climate change, or kind of creating laws that were related to climate change, very often we never had the people who were the most impacted by climate change actually be at policymaking tables. So when I went to environmental justice conferences with policymakers, judges, and lawyers, very often they would be all the white men. And I thought that that was interesting because it was women who were facing the brunt of these issues, at least in developing countries. And I think that made me realize that ensuring their representation at those tables wasn't just about fulfilling some kind of hollow quota on gender, but it was about making sure that the policies that we designed were representative of the people that they were designed for. Because if their perspectives weren't actually integrated or heard, there was no point of the policy altogether. So a lot of my films were used as case studies on effective mitigation and adaptation stories from South Asia. And in the process, I came across really interesting women and young girls. This is a short clip about Manal Shah, who I met in North Pakistan in a place called Dir, which has a very low rate of female literacy in general. But I was very excited to meet her because of how excited she was specifically about planting trees. But this one I made when I was a lot younger, so it's not the best quality, but I thought I would kind of screen this as part of it anyway.
2012 کې واورې شوې بارانونه به کېده نو هغې نه پس دلته اوس بارانونه صحیح نه دي شوي نو چې کله باران کېږي نو باران اوبه ایسې ځي او هسې ضایع کېږي او سمې تیز سیلابونه راځي زموږ دا علاقه نه ده زموږ دا علاقه داسې ده ټوله زموږ دا علاقه داسې ده نو دلته چې ورته اوس ونې وې نو ونې خو هغه چې باران وشي نو رامنې کوي که نه نو چې هغه کله رامنې کوي نو هغه چې ځمکه جذب کوي او لکه هسې نه ضایع کېږي اوبه نو اوس موږ له هم پکار ده زموږ لا کم را روان خلک چې دي موږ له پکار ده چې موږ هم ونې ولګوو ما دا سوچ کړی که نه چې زه د خپل سکول د سټوډنټانو ته ووایم ټول ته که نه چې موږ هر یو کس به یو یو ونه لګوو نو چې موږ ونه ولګوو که نه بیا به زموږ موسم هم ښایي ګرمي هم به نه وي ټول موسم لکه صحیح وي.
This is right now a global issue and this is almost affecting every community. You need to step out because that is the only choice, the good choice you can make. Despite the challenges, the social issues, the barriers, the exclusion that is actually existing in our society, if you look around, you will find many girls and women fighting on many fronts. So this is what Manal is doing. She's regularly going to schools, she's regularly going to gatherings, the public gatherings in Dir, and she's talking about the role of youth in the social change process. I see that spark in her eyes that she wants to resolve the issues. She wants to do something for the problems that is going to affect her or her relatives, her beloved ones, or her community and her surroundings. when we see girls and women, they have the direct connection with all these issues and those problems. So by excluding them, actually we're excluding their ideas, their opinion, their advices to these issues.
دلته څومره مسایل دي پلوشن دی ډېر شي قسمونه پلوشن دی د نورې فیکټریانو نه لګوي دي پلوشن جوړ هغې نه پلوشن جوړ شوی دی نور بوټي نشته مونږ اوبه کمې دلته زموږ د ټولو دغه ستاسو ټولو کې چا ویول شوي دي چا پایپ اوبه نشته
مونږ وچ شوي دي
او دا چا کمې کړي دي مونږ پخپله کمې کړي دي مونږ وهلي دي او ونې ولې کمې شوي دي پخوانه به چې کوم خلک په غرونو کې به چې اوسېده خو دوی چې چل کړی بیډ منیجمنټ یې کړی و څنګه بیډ منیجمنټ دا بیډ منیجمنټ یې کړی و چې ټولې ونې وهلې وي او دغه بیرته یې نالولې نه د دې نه وجې بیا ډېر ښه مسایل جوړ شوي دي دا باران چې وشي دا اوبه سم تیزې راځي او دلته جذب کېږي نه ونې هم نه یې ورته نو ځکه داسې راشي 90% دا ضایع کېږي او هغه 10% موږ ته میلاویږي موږ به خپل ځان نه شروع کړو د خپل کور نه که نه لکه څنګه ګوره کچواړه شو مونږ شو یوت شو او نور خلک نور مشران ته هم خلک شو د ټول له پکار ده چې ټول یو ونه ولګوي نو چې ونه ولګوي زموږ ټول موسم هر څه حالات به رغښ که زموږ دا ټول ماحول به ټیټ کېږي مونږ چې نن په سکول کې کوي خپل بوټي لګولي د هغې به له وروسته خلکو ته پیدا وي او به خلکو له سوری ورکوي خلک ورته ځان نه اچوي ټول سکول واړه چې دي د ټول ته به ما دا پرامیس کړی دی چې د ټول ته دا خبره کوم چې بوټي به لګوو اوس چې دا کم شی شوي دي هغه شوي دي بس پرېږدوه دغه اوبه چاته کمې دي مونږ ته کمې دي ګرمي چاته سیوا ده مونږ ته سیوا ده نور پلوشن چاته را جوړ شوی دی مونږ په څه ځای نه بیمارېږو مونږ پخپله کړي دي مونږ بیمارېږو نو مونږ ټول له پکار ده هر یو کس و یوت والا یي کچ ماشومان یي مونږ یو زموږ مشرانو د ټول له پکار ده چې د ټول یو بوټی ولګوي
I see many young girls coming up, standing up and saying that their opinion matters. Their point of view matters. They need to express themselves and nobody can stop them. The good thing is nobody now can stop them.
So that's a short one that I did a few years ago, but I think the more I kind of learned about these women and the more I learned about their stories, the more it was exciting to me that I could kind of document some sense of autonomy that they had and them kind of taking action, because I think one thing that I realized was most of the representation about Pakistani women, especially internationally, was about something happening to them. And there was always some sense of tragedy or acid violence in the context of which they were framed. And whether or not, planting trees is the most effective mitigation method didn't matter to me as much in this story. I think I just wanted to show the actions that were taken by young girls whose stories were otherwise not documented. So this one was actually shown for policymakers and judges. A longer version of it was shown for policymakers and judges across Asia and the Pacific. But that kind of led me to Hunza, which is further up north. And there I met 3 different women who were entrepreneurs. And I think that was very exciting to me because they weren't doing anything extraordinary. All of them had 3 small dreams. One of them was a carpenter, one of them was a chef, and the third made samosas, which most of you know is kind of like a fried dumpling. And they weren't, athletes or scientists or did something amazing, but their dream was valid to them because it was theirs. And it was something small, but it was something that they protected. And I think in Pakistan, but not just Pakistan, I think everywhere, women feel this pressure and need to kind of contort themselves to fit into a box or to kind of mutilate parts of themselves to be a wife or a sister or a daughter. And I think in their lives, I just wanted to kind of get a snapshot of the everyday texture of their lives. Even though they weren't doing something exceptional, but they were just protecting the small dreams that they had. And one of them hadn't actually, while she was raising her kids, she didn't actually leave the house that much until 10 years later when she decided she wanted to set up a little stall for samosas. And that was interesting to me because she would walk 6 kilometers a day, one way, every single day, just to sell her dumplings. And within something like that, there were so many sacrifices that they made. There were so many pressures that they kind of resisted because they wanted to go to the carpentry workshop every day. So this one is about 3 different women. One of them, again, is a carpenter. She makes sitars, she makes chairs. One of them, again, is a chef. And it's just about the process of kind of them protecting their small dream. And about the process of, I think, just making something with their hands every day and why they enjoy that. So this is the more recent one, and this was filmed in Hunza.
चलो سكرتن ترى بارك شوي ببان شوي بريدك تري وروشن بي ونيت خاميدا انتظار الناس بس فيديو هاي بس
جنونگی بیبی آمینه سکنویر دم پاسور سموسا دکان چاوه
मेरा नाम शाहिदा है और मेरे मियाँ के साथ ब्रेकअप हुआ तो मैंने कारपेंटरी का काम स्टार्ट किया।
मेरा नाम सफीना है और मैं हुंजा में बहुत मशहूर छाप शुरू बनाती हूँ।
की बुराई तो होती रहती है ना। सफीना ऊपर नहीं चढ़ना, अगर गिर गया तो दुल्हा नहीं मिलेगा।
औरतें दुनिया अपने हाथ में रखती हैं। इन्हीं हाथों से वो परवरिश करते हैं, खिलाते हैं और अपने हाथों से किस्मत भी बदल सकते हैं। हुंजा भी एक अजीब सी जगह है, थोड़ा खट्टा थोड़ा मीठा। लगता है पहाड़ों ने हमें अपने दामन में घेर लिया है। हुंजा में पली बड़ी हूँ। मैं बहुत छोटी होती थी, मैं बहुत शरारती टाइप की थी। अभी भी हूँ, लेकिन उस टाइम बहुत ज़्यादा थी। हमेशा रात को हमारी क्लास होती थी। मम्मी हमें जमा करवा के कहती थी कि आपने सुबह सीरियस होके दुपट्टा लेके स्कूल जाना है, किसी के खेत से कोई चोरी नहीं करना है। मैं इधर उधर को देख के जैसे ही टीचर नहीं होते थे बैग उठा के भागती थी। हमसाये के अनार के दरख्त पे चढ़ती थी, बैग में भर के अनार लेके कहीं साइड पे जाके खाती हुई। बचपन में मेरे मम्मी दादी सबके छोटे उम्र में शादी किया था। छोटे उम्र में शादी करना मुझे तो अच्छा नहीं लगा। मेरे घर में तो अब्बू थोड़ा जालिम टाइप का था। वो तो हमेशा खबरें सुनो पाकिस्तान गर्क हो रहा है, तो अब्बू के चिक चिक और टीवी के चिक चिक सुनने के बजाय मैं चोरी छुपे ट्यूशन पढ़ना है कह के हमसाया के घर जाती थी। वहाँ पे जाके मैं ट्यूशन के सारे बुक्स वहाँ पे छोड़ती थी, आगे आके टीवी को देखती थी। मेरा जो बचपन में प्यार था वो कुकिंग से ही था। मुझे एक औरत नजर आई, वो मसाला टीवी पे आती थी, ऊपर शेफ कैप पहन के लोगों को दिखा रही थी कि ये फलाना मसाला डालने से ये कुरमा बनेगा, ये अचार बनेगा। मैंने जब उस औरत को देखा, मैंने सोचा एक दिन मैंने भी इसी लेवल पे आना है।
मेरा नाम बीबी आमिना है। सोचती थी कि या मेरी शादी नहीं होती तो मैं कुछ बन जाती। 17 साल में मेरी शादी हुई, 18 साल में मेरा बेटा पैदा हुआ। ख्वाब सोचने की भी टाइम नहीं था ना वो, क्योंकि ये टाइम होते बच्चे एंजॉय करें। तो मैं अब घर संभालूं या मैं आगे पढ़ूं, क्योंकि घर में कोई नहीं था। फिर एक घर को पूरा चलाना मतलब मेरे एज भी नहीं थे। फिर प्रेशर तो पड़ती है ना, डर भी होता था कि अगर मैं ये काम नहीं करूं तो हमारे इर्द गिर्द के लोग ना ये कहेंगे वो, बस इसमें लगे तो जो ख्वाब था ना वो वही दब गया।
मेरा नाम शाहिदा है। मेरा ख्वाब बहुत अच्छे थे, लेकिन मैं कहा कि कोई मुझे अच्छा सा वो शौहर मिले। फिर मेरा रिश्ता आया से वो तो शक्ल से तो अच्छा लगता था, फिर अंदर की वो मालूम नहीं था ना। शुरू में मैं कोशिश कर रही थी कि शौहर के साथ ही रहूं, मतलब हर किसी की ख्वाहिश होती है शौहर के साथ बैठना, लेकिन उसके साथ रहना तो बहुत मुश्किल था। मेरी बेटी को भी मारा, फिर मैं बहुत रोई, बस रोने के अलावा मेरे पास कुछ भी नहीं था उस टाइम। शुरू में मुझे ऐसा लगा ना जाके कोई समंदर में डूब कर अपने आप को ख़त्म करूं। फिर मेरे बेटा और बेटी की याद बहुत आई। फिर मैंने ये वो सोचना भी बंद किया। फिर मुझे ना बहुत बुरा लगा। मैंने कहा कि मेरे भाई को कॉल करती हूँ, फिर मैं एक दिन भी इधर नहीं रहती हूँ। तो मेरे भाई ने कहा एकदम इधर आ जाओ, आप क्यों छुपाती हो बातें जब आपको इतना मारते हैं, बच्चों को भी। बल्कि भाई ने कहा कि आप इधर आ जाए, इधर वैसे भी ख़वातीन कारपेंटर का काम करते हैं, आपका शौक़ है तो आ जाए।
मैंने सोचा कि यार किसी कैफ़े में जाके काम सीखूं। सबसे पहले उन जालिमों ने मुझे डिशवॉशिंग पे रखा। जब मैं डिशवॉशिंग करती थी, केमिकल की वजह से मेरे पूरे हाथ जल जाती थी, क्योंकि मुझे आइडिया नहीं था कि किस केमिकल को पहले यूज़ करना है, किसको बाद में यूज़ करना। जब रात को घर आती थी तो मेरा पूरे हाथ कटे होते थे। तो मेरी मम्मी बेचारी मुझे स्पून से खाना खिलाती थी, क्योंकि मेरा अंदर जुनून था उसको सीखने का। इसलिए मैं कहती थी मम्मी सुबह नहीं जाऊंगी, लेकिन जैसे ही सुबह होती थी मेरे अंदर एक कीड़ा आता था, तो फिर मैं भाग के फिर रेस्टोरेंट जाती थी। उसके बाद मैंने एक प्लान किया, कब तक मैं अपने हाथ को कट करके बैठूं। मैंने सोचा कि यार लड़की भी रिस्क लेना चाहिए। मेरे पास कुछ नहीं था, 1 रुपया नहीं था। पहले बैंक में कॉल किया, मैंने कहा मुझे लोन चाहिए। मैंने कहा अगले दिन ही मैं गाय को बेचूंगी, आपका रिटर्न करूंगी। ये ज़िंदगी में फर्स्ट टाइम रिस्क लेके गाय को भी बराबर किया, लोन को भी बराबर करके मैंने फिर स्टार्ट किया। मैंने जब मैदान में निकल के काम स्टार्ट किया तो अपने लोगों ने मुझे उल्टा सीधा बोलना स्टार्ट किया। इधर से कॉल, उधर से मेरे अब्बू के कान भरना, भाई के कान भरना। उनको ये लगता है कि लड़की हमेशा घर में चुप करके बैठे खेती बाड़ी करे तो पीठ पीछे वजन उठा के आने में उनको तकलीफ नहीं होती है। इससे बेहतर है कि तुम अपने पास एक हुनर है तो उसको मैदान में आके लोगों को दिखाओ। जो लोग अब्बू के कान भरते थे, भाई के कान भरते थे, सोचते हैं कि ये औरत बूढ़ी हो गई। जो कि मैं कमाती हूँ, घर में खिलाती हूँ, इसका मतलब मैं बुरी हूँ। ये दुनिया, ये महफिल मेरे काम की नहीं, मेरे काम की नहीं, मेरे काम की नहीं। मैंने कहा एक कान से सुन सफीना, दूसरे कान से निकाल। अल्लाह ने 2 कान इसलिए दिया है और मैं बाउंड होना नहीं चाहती हूँ।
जब मेरे बच्चे बड़े हो गए फिर मैंने सोचा कि मैं कुछ कर सकती हूँ। बहुत सालों से ना हम अंदर थे, अपने घर से पहली दफ़ा निकलना हुआ ना। फिर जब हमने सोचा कि हम रोड पे निकलेंगे तो खौफ रहता है ना कि अगर किसी ने सवाल किया तो हम क्या कहेंगे या क्या जवाब देंगे। कि एक दिन हमने कहा कि हम ओपनिंग करेंगे। फिर उन्होंने कहा कि हम कैसे करेंगे, तो मैंने कहा कि बाजी हम करेंगे, बस रोड पे जो भी लोग हैं उनको बुलाएंगे। फिर हमने अपने लोकल के 2-3 डिश बनाए। फिर जो रोड पे था कोई दुकानदार, कोई होटल वाले को बुला के ना फिर अपने ओपनिंग किया। हमें पता भी नहीं था कि समोसा कैसे बनते। गांव के अंदर एक जो मेरे चाचा थे वो बना रहे थे ना, तो फिर हम आके बस देखते थे कि वो बना रहे, तो हमने कहा बस ये आसान है, हम बना लेंगे। फिर इतना रश हुआ, हमें समझ नहीं आई कि हमने समोसा कैसे बनाना है। बाजी ने कहा कि हमने नहीं ये इस तरह बना। मैंने कहा बाजी नहीं, ये इस तरह काट के इस तरह बनाते, इस तरह कर करके। फिर एक गाइड था, कुछ टाइम खड़े रह के ना फिर देखता रहे कि ये लोग क्या करते हैं। फिर वो आके कहा कि बाजी मुझे दो, मैं आपको बना के दिखाता हूँ। फिर उन्होंने हमें दिखाया, हमें पैकिंग करना सिखाया, फिर बेलना भी, कि फिर इस तरह का फोल्ड करते हैं, इसमें वो पेस्ट लगा के। उस दिन हमारा सबसे बड़ा वो दिन था ना, इतना ज़्यादा दिन का सारा आमदन रही ना, तो हम दोनों ना बहुत ज़्यादा खुश हुए। यहाँ से हमारा स्टार्ट हुआ।
Yani sabret was nermi beshn shoce gona yosh khosh gost.
मैं तो काम कर रही थी, उस टाइम आरी से मेरा हाथ लग गया। फिर मेरी बेटी था कि ना इतनी रोई, बस मम्मी ये काम नहीं करो। मैंने कहा कि करना है, थोड़ा चोट लगेगा। फिर इसी तरह हम लोग आदी भी हो गए। तो फिर कहा मम्मी आप वैसे भी जल्दबाजी ज़्यादा करती हो, होशियारी से काम करे। मम्मी कहा ना, फिर आप नहीं होती तो हमें कौन वो करेगा। मैंने कुछ नहीं हुआ, थोड़ा सा ज़ख्म हो गया है, फिर वो बढ़ जाएगा। शुरू में जब कारपेंट करके घर चले जाते, रिश्तेदारों ने भी कहा कि ये क्यों करते हो, भाईयान है, अब्बू है, वो नहीं, मुझे किसी से भी नहीं लेना है। अल्लाह ने तो 2 पाँव और हाथ दिया है। मैंने कहा कि मैं खुद कमाऊंगी, मैं ज़रूर कारपेंट्री जाऊंगी। जब मेरी पहली बार सैलरी मिली तो मुझे हिम्मत हो गया। जब फीस बच्चों को देती हूँ ना, बस मुझे अजीब सा खुशी महसूस हो रहा है। शॉपिंग के लिए जाती हूँ तो बस मेरी बेटी की याद आती है मैं कि उसके लिए ले लूँ। हर जो महीना या सालगिरह वगैरह हमारे मतलब रस्में होते हैं ना, उस टाइम उसके लिए ज़रूर लेके आती हूँ।
जैसे मैं कैफ़े पहुंचती थी, म्यूज़िक लगाती थी, मैं कहती थी बाढ़ में जाइए, जो बोलने वाले कुत्ते हैं भौंकने दो, एंजॉय करो, म्यूज़िक लगाओ, काम करना स्टार्ट करो। मैं एक कान से सुनती हूँ, दूसरे कान से निकालती। हमारी तरफ जब लोग आते हैं तो हमारी ख़वातीन को देख के कहते हैं कि वाओ, यहाँ पे लेडीज़ मर्दों के शाने बशाने काम करती है।
यहाँ पे मुख्तलिफ़ किस्म के लोग आते हैं, तो वहाँ दूर से इस तरह तिरछे नज़र से देख के ना फिर वहाँ से चले जाते हैं, या कोई आके फिर सवाल करते हैं, बाजी आप ये दुकान चलाते हो? जब इंसान खुद कुछ अपने हाथों से करे ना तो उनका अलग मज़ा है। ग्यारह 12 साल तंदर घर में रहे। जब हम निकले तो हमें पता चला कि बाहर भी एक खाली मर्दों के लिए नहीं है, ख़वातीन के लिए भी है। मैंने कुछ नहीं सोचा था, क्योंकि वो सोचने का टाइम ही नहीं था ना। जब मेरी बेटी अभी 20 साल की है, मतलब उनमें सोचने की सलाहियत भी होगी, उन्हें अपने ख्वाब को पूरा करने की भी मतलब सोच होगा। जब मुझे खुशी भी मिलती है कि मेरे बच्ची अभी आगे अपना जो भी ख्वाब है वो पूरा भी करेंगे और अपने लिए कुछ अच्छा सोचेंगे। मुझे लगता है कि जब मैंने काम शुरू किया था तब मैं पानी की तरह थी। जो मेरी रेस्टोरेंट थी वहाँ तक आने के लिए मैं 1000 बार सोचती थी। अब जो मैं यहाँ रोड पे निकली हूँ तो मैं पहाड़ की तरह।
शुरू में मतलब हमारे साथ सीनियर कारपेंटर है ना, वो निशान लगा के फिर हमें देते थे। एक दफ़ा मैंने उसको गौर से देखा तो फिर मैंने कहा कि वो दूसरा मैं खुद निशान भी खुद लगाऊंगी, फिर सब कुछ खुद करके फिर मैं एक बनाऊंगी। उसने कहा ठीक है, अगर ऐसा कर तो खुद बनाओ। फिर वो बन गया तो मैं बहुत खुश हुआ उस टाइम। फिर खिड़कियाँ आई, फिर वो दरवाजे, फिर लोगों का काम, फिर घरों का काम, फिर छत वगैरह डालना। वहीं से मेरा मतलब काम स्टार्ट हुआ है कि मैं रात को भी ना बस वही सोच रही थी कल ऐसा करना है। एक दिन में 3-4 चेयर बन जाती है, फिर खुश होकर फिर चली जाती है। कभी कभार जिंदगी में चीजें टूट जाती हैं, लेकिन वो चीजें जुड़ भी सकती हैं। लकड़ी लकड़ी ही होती है, लेकिन उससे लोग स्टार बना लेते हैं। एक ज़िंदगी सबको मिल जाती है, आप उससे कुछ भी बना सकते हैं। जो चीज़ हम बनाते हैं, हम चाहते हैं कि दूसरी लड़कियां भी उससे फ़ायदा लें।
कमबख्त लड़कियों, अपने रूह को जिंदा रखो।
Fantastic way to finish Friday. Did those women know each other before you made the film?
Yes. Two of them knew each other already. The third one kind of met the other two in the process, the filmmaking process. But they became friends during this as well, but two of them already knew each other.
They did look like friends.
Yes.
I was curious, you were talking earlier about women and autonomy, and in Pakistan in particular, where it's quite a difficult thing to travel freely and to start a business and move. Is there something special about Hunza that happens there more than other places?
I think it's one place in Pakistan that a lot of people think about in terms of kind of being a utopia almost. And I think the one thing that I felt was very different while I was there and while I was filming was just the degree of comfort that everybody felt with women being in the public space and in the public domain. And I think that it was interesting to see how that's traveled down generations. So a lot of these women had seen their grandmothers be in public. They had seen their husbands and their brothers be okay. The fact that that permission is needed is sad in itself. But they had seen, their mothers being in the public space, in the public domain, being carpenters, cooking food, things like that. And so I think that really traveled down. But there was something very beautiful about the fact that the younger women, like the ones who are playing the sitar, the ones who are now kind of playing music, make use of, the things that were made, designed by the previous generations. And I think that travels down. But I think the really unique thing was that there was no stigma around just women really being in public. And I think that's something that's kind of taken for granted very often in the West. But for these women, the most radical thing was just being okay with and putting themselves in the public domain. And for them, that was radical in itself. So,
And is that something that's under threat? Around the world, women's ability to express themselves and rights seem to be under threat. Is that something that's under threat in Hunza, or is that maybe something you want to do with your film, to show it and amplify it?
Yeah, I think that's something that's under threat everywhere at the moment. In Hunza, I think it's a little bit different because the region itself is very close-knit. It's very tightly knit. And they're very kind of supportive of each other and protective of their own values and culture and things like that. And so I think with everywhere, I think women's, threat, there's a threat to their safety, to their dignity, to their ability to get an education, their ability to earn an income. And I think that also applies to Hunza, of course, but I guess it's a different place because the sense of community kind of protects a lot of the women from that. And a lot of the women there are very kind of protective of their daughters, kind of compromising their freedom. And
Great. Well, it was very special to see. Well, it's to start a conversation, so I'm going to throw it out and people can ask questions or make observations, and if you'd like to put your hand up, microphone will come to you. Okay, so there's this one here to start with, and then the person back there, thank you.
It was a wonderful film. Thank you so much for making it. And I was especially impressed with the beautiful mountains and the bridge. And I wondered, religion wasn't mentioned at all in the film, and I wondered, are these women, are they Muslims? And I wonder how much is a religious thing and how much is a cultural thing that women aren't allowed to be out in the public, or is it a mixture of both? I wonder what your opinion is on that.
Sure. Most of them are from the Ismaili faith, but I think it's a mix of both things. I think it's a mix of religion, but I think at the same time, in this region, specifically, the culture is one that does allow a degree of autonomy and freedom to women. And so I would say that it has less to do with religion and a little bit more about kind of the tradition and I think the cultural taboos in other parts of the country that you don't see, that are more absent, I would say, in Hunza.
Yeah, hello.
That's on there.
I've got quite a loud voice anyway. I have to ask, the shot that you did with that huge bridge, and sort of the background, I don't know if it was the angle of the camera, but there seemed quite big gaps between the steps. And she was walking every day. I don't know, it's just me. I thought, my God, how is she walking that? And did you walk the bridge? This is the question I want to ask.
I didn't walk the bridge. I was too scared. That's the good thing. The great thing about drones and technology is you don't have to do that. And
what were those gaps? Were they actually as big as they looked?
There are huge gaps in between. But she makes that trip every single day. And I think following her, one of the things that was really interesting to see was that for her, something as small as, making those samosas and going to that stall was important enough that she would make that journey every single day. And that shot was interesting because we actually had one or two villagers who were about to cross. And just to get that shot, we had to stop them on either side, which is very difficult with that much of a gap between the planks. But we stopped them, and then we tried like 3 times, and then we got the shot of her crossing with the drone. But I was very personally grateful that I didn't have to cross it just to get the shot.
I guess or somebody else. Yes, up at the back there. Thanks.
Thank you. Firstly, absolutely loved all of the documentaries. I think beautifully shot. I'm also from Pakistan, and it just felt like these were some of the stories that we sit down and talk to our aunts about, and some of the stories that we just talk about when we're just sitting with women in the country, not just in Hunza, but beyond that as well. And what I found the most interesting and the most engaging in the way that you captured the story was that it wasn't about the barriers that women face. And I know a lot of questions and a lot of discussions around Pakistan are the barriers and the hindrances and the issues that we have. But if you actually sit with Pakistani women, it is not just it's never about the barriers. It's always about what they're actually doing. It's always about having that agency, as you talked about. But more than that, it's about the joy in doing that. And I don't think that joy is captured on screen very often. And I think it was just brilliant as a Pakistani woman to sit here and see that joy. Because when you talk to your aunts, they're happy with what they do. They're not wallowing in misery with all the issues that they face every day. They're just happy to be able to do what they do every day. And I think just shifting that lens to that joy is just really important, and it gives us our autonomy back. So no question, I just really wanted to thank you for taking that particular lens.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's also a risk of, not completely undermining the very real challenges, like you said, which are real and they exist. But I think shifting the narrative and kind of giving the women the agency in these stories isn't merely kind of like a narrative or aesthetic choice. I think it can be like a very political one as well. And so I think that's something that I wanted to do, because I didn't just want it to be in the context of a cause necessarily. I feel like with women in developing countries and the way that they're shown on screen, they always have to justify their existence. So you either have to be like doing something radical about it or silent about it. And so I just wanted to show the everyday life of a woman who's doing that and is making those small changes or sacrifices or overcoming them to protect like any small dream as well.
Yeah. Yes, I've lost my track of who we had hands on. There's a hand here, and then I think was someone just in front of you? Yeah, and I can see Steve as well. Okay, we'll carry on a little bit, yeah.
Huge congratulations, absolutely stunning films. I'd love to hear your ambitions for disseminating the film and what audience you're seeking, where you'd love it to be seen, and potentially would you face resistance in certain areas if you're trying to show it to Pakistan?
Sure. I mean, the one difficult thing I think about telling women's stories in Pakistan is that there are different degrees of resistance that women have, because they have very valid concerns about where it's going to be shown. And so the good thing is that if you speak the language and if you're able to be very clear about exactly what it's going to be used for, they're a lot more willing to open up compared to kind of an outsider coming in and then trying to tell their story for reasons that they don't understand. And so I've always been very clear with the subjects of the films about why it's used, about the fact that I want it to be used for people in other communities in Pakistan to see that it's okay for my daughter to become an athlete or for my daughter to become a carpenter. And to also kind of, I suppose, mitigate the stigma around that. The different films with different subjects are used for different kind of platforms. The ones on climate change, I didn't have time to go deeper into that, but those are almost always used at policymaking platforms because I wanted their stories to be represented at those tables where they are otherwise not heard. With something like this, it's usually then screened in universities in Pakistan. So like LUMS is another big one where they usually screen films, but then also in Hunza. So I think it's very important for me to make sure that the people whose stories are told, they're able to kind of enjoy the process of seeing their stories on a screen or at a festival. And so I think making sure that the local communities also are able to enjoy something like this is very important to me. And in the past, I've done that in Mardan, which is in the north of Pakistan, in Chakwal, which is in the south, because it's very interesting to see kind of the cross-contamination of, there's a woman who is in the north and has some kind of a challenge that she's facing, and she might not know that there's another woman in the south who has dealt with that. And so I think, that's one of the reasons why, in my mind, the audience is usually primarily Pakistani women. But yeah.
Okay, Steve and then Derek.
Yeah, thank you so much for your film. I found it very moving for lots of reasons. When I was 18, when I finished A-levels and before I became a student, I spent my year off in Pakistan, and I visited Hunza. So I saw all of that scenery and saw some of that music being played, but it was played by men. And when I went into a restaurant, it was all served by men. So seeing that change was just extraordinary. But one of the remarkable things about Hunza is it was closed off for many years, because I think it wasn't until the Karakoram Highway was built in the 60s and 70s that the Hunza community could actually really interact with the rest of India, the Indian subcontinent as it was originally. So I think until the 60s and 70s it was pretty much cut off. So that community, has it now become much more globalized, much more connected with the rest of the world, and how has that changed it? Because it was a very insular type knit community.
100%, yeah. I mean, that's changed so much, and I think one of the exciting things about kind of documenting that is seeing how quickly things can change, and how quickly, you know, seeing one woman take lead or become like a pioneer of whether it's like carpentry can have such a quick ripple effect in that community, and you can have 25 new, you know, young girls thinking about maybe that is something that I can do. But I agree, I mean, there's risks to that as well, of the fact that it's become a lot more accessible. There were lots of complaints in Hunza about the fact that because it has become a bit more of like a tourist attraction lately, that there's a lot of influence, there's a lot more pollution, things like that. And so I think the connectivity and globalization has also obviously brought, you know, disadvantages like that. But like you said, it's just exciting for me to have witnessed that change happen so quickly. And I think that makes it exciting to see what's going to happen with the next generation, where instead of maybe 25, you'll have 50 more girls kind of thinking about what would otherwise have been a very male-dominated field.
Yeah, thanks so much for showing those films. I wanted to ask you about one of the shorter, earlier films with this, like, really quite striking young person who seemed to be incredibly knowledgeable about environmental issues and incredibly passionate. It was remarkable. I just wondered if you could say more about that particular individual. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. The younger one? Yeah. So Manal, I saw a video of her on Facebook, to be honest. And she was tiny, and like you saw in the video, she was like this tiny girl who was speaking to like audiences like of dozens of just older men in Dir. And I think the moment that I saw it, I really wanted to know who she was, and I wanted to meet her. And so I found her, and I found her aunt, and I found her family, and I asked them if I could stay with them. And so I kind of lived with her for about a week or so, and I wanted to just kind of cover her story. And she was just incredibly, so her father had introduced her to DW, like Deutsche Welle, and she had kind of learned more and more about, you know, climate change, about the impact of climate change and what trees can do, and how the absence of trees can, you know, worsen and amplify flooding where she lives. And yeah, I thought she was incredible. And that was another, you know, story where I didn't necessarily want to frame it as like a climate justice story, but I just wanted to tell the story of a girl in Pakistan, her world, and what she is doing in that world with the resources that she has. And I felt like that story would otherwise maybe not have been picked up. And so I thought that that would be interesting to do. And at the moment, actually, I think she has made her first trip. As we speak, she has made her first trip outside of Pakistan, and she's doing like a cultural exchange program that I've been getting pictures of. So she used the film to kind of apply for this program, and she's learning more about like climate change and climate policy, even though she's still quite young. But
how old is she now?
I think she must be 12.
Right, so how old was she then?
I think that was 5 years ago, so 7, I suppose.
Right.
Maybe she's a little bit older, yeah. But then in the little video, she's like even younger. I think like but 7 or 8 in the archive video, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for the beautiful films. Can you tell us about Apple Tree Lady, please?
Oh. I wish I had more time to kind of show an extended version of that. To be honest, with the Apple Tree Lady, I haven't made a complete one yet. That's one that I wanted to do while I was covering the story of the 3 other women in Hunza. But because their story was more about entrepreneurship, it didn't blend in as well. So I wanted to do like a separate 5-minute one about her. And so I filmed it, and I have all of the footage for it. And it's something that I still have to complete. But Hawa Bibi is like known all around Hunza. So if you go up there, they all had, it was very strange for me because I was just traveling there kind of with my camera and my one friend who helps me film things. And she offered me an apple in the most ridiculous, like Disney film kind of way. And I accepted it, and I kind of sat there, but I had no idea what that interaction was. And the more I asked people about it, the more they were like, yeah, that's just Hawa Bibi. And I was like, oh, that explains nothing. And so the more I spoke to people, she's, I think, in her 80s now. And she's basically been sitting under this apple tree. The way people go to like a job 9 to 5, she protects this tree from 9 to 5. So she sits there when the sun comes up, and she leaves when the sun sets. Yeah, she's always there. Like, if you go, you will find her. But I didn't have enough time, to be honest, to go deeper into her story, but it's one that I wanted to cover. But I just thought it was such a like simple and gentle kind of thing, documenting a woman's connection with the environment. And again, for her, that's a valid kind of mission and dream to have. She's protecting her apple trees, and if she likes visitors, she'll give them an apple tree. If not, yeah. But I just thought she was interesting.
Okay, well, I think maybe we should call it a day there, but thank you very much. It made me feel human and political and hopeful, and these are good things, so I hope that has the effect on other people, and thank you very much, and keep making your films, and come back to Mansfield again soon. Next Friday, we've got our last public talk of the series, which is our Hans lecture, our annual politics lecture, and John Glenn, who used to be the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, is coming, and he's going to be talking about the 10 years since Brexit. We'll try not to make it too depressing, but do come along. Yes, thank you very much. And then next term will be the next series, so do look out online and sign up if you want to come. But thank you all for coming on quite a damp, cold evening. And thank you, Sarah, very much for a fantastic talk and your beautiful films.
Thank you so much.